I found the ring on a Thursday morning while reaching for my tape measure. The light was still gray through the garage window, and my coffee sat cooling on the workbench beside a stack of cabinet doors I was sanding for the Morrison job. The ring was tucked into the small compartment where I kept my pencil stubs, positioned carefully on its side so it would not roll. It had been there long enough to gather a fine coating of sawdust. I lifted it between my thumb and forefinger and held it under the work lamp. The band caught the light the way it always had, plain white gold without flourish, exactly what Claire had wanted 26 years ago when we were young and certain about simple things. She had been gone for 11 days. The ring should have been on her hand or in her jewelry box or lost somewhere between here and the apartment she had rented across town. It should not have been in my toolbox, hidden among the tools I used every single day, placed with intention, in a spot only she would know I would eventually find. I set it down on the bench and stared at it, while my coffee went cold. The garage was quiet except for the hum of the space heater in the corner. I had questions, but I did not move to answer them yet. I had learned over the years that patience reveals more than urgency ever could. I suppose I should start earlier. Claire and I had been married for most of my adult life. We met when I was 24 and finishing my apprenticeship with a Finnish carpenter who worked the historic homes on the east side. She was waitressing at a diner near the lumber yard and always remembered my order. Black coffee, eggs over easy, rye toast. She had a way of listening that made you feel like the only person in the room, even when the place was packed. We married a year later in her parents' backyard. I built the arbor myself. We had no children. That was not a choice we made together so much as a fact we eventually stopped discussing. Claire threw herself into her work at the nonprofit downtown, coordinating community programs, and I built my business one careful joint at a time. We were steady. We spoke in shorthand. She knew when I needed quiet, and I knew when she needed distraction. For years, that was enough, but things had shifted. I could not point to a single moment when it happened. It was more like the way a house settles, invisible until you notice the door no longer closes flush. She began staying later at the office. I began taking jobs farther out, projects that kept me away for longer stretches. When we were home at the same time, we moved around each other with the polite distance of roommates. Dinners were quiet. Conversations were functional. She stopped asking about my projects, and I stopped offering. 3 weeks ago, she sat down at the kitchen table while I was finishing a plate of leftovers. She folded her hands in front of her and waited until I looked up. Her face was calm, almost rehearsed. "I think we've grown apart," she said. I set down my fork. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not happy. I haven't been for a while. I think we both know that." I did know. I had felt it too. The slow erosion of something that used to matter. But hearing her say it out loud made it solid and irreversible. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I've rented a place just for now. I need some space to figure things out." She did not ask for permission, and I did not offer objections. She packed 2 suitcases that evening and left before the sun came up the next morning. I heard her moving through the house in the dark, opening drawers, closing doors softly so as not to wake me, though I was already awake. When her car pulled out of the driveway, I stood at the bedroom window and watched her taillights disappear down the street. For 11 days I went through the motions. I showed up to job sites. I measured and cut and sanded and installed. I answered calls from clients and nodded at their questions about timelines. At night I came home to a house that felt too large and too quiet. I made simple meals and ate them standing at the counter. I did not call her. She did not call me. Then I found the ring. I turned it over in my hand and tried to understand the logic. If she was done with the marriage, why leave it where I would eventually find it? If she wanted me to have it back, why not just hand it to me or leave it somewhere obvious? The placement was deliberate. She had opened my toolbox, found that specific compartment, and nestled the ring inside like a message I was meant to decode. I thought about the last time I had used that compartment. 2 days before she left. Maybe 3. I had been organizing my tools after finishing a built-in bookshelf for the Hendersons. Claire had been home that afternoon. I remembered because she brought me a glass of water while I was working in the garage and we exchanged maybe 5 words. She had stood near the workbench for a moment, looking at nothing in particular, then went back inside. That must have been when she did it. I finished my coffee, which was now lukewarm, and placed the ring in my shirt pocket. I had work to do. The Morrison cabinets would not sand themselves. But the question stayed with me all morning, a splinter I could not quite reach. By lunchtime, I had made a decision. I needed to know if she had left anything else behind, any other signs I had missed. I went through the house room by room, methodical and unhurried. I checked drawers and closets and the pockets of coats she had not taken. I found nothing unusual at first. Her side of the bathroom was mostly cleared out. Her half of the closet was sparse. The bookshelf in the living room still held her favorites, but that could mean anything. Then I went to her office. It was a small room at the back of the house, more of a den, really, where she kept her files and her desk and the corkboard covered in photos and reminders. I had rarely gone in there over the years. It was her space, and I respected that. Now I stood in the doorway and scanned the surfaces. The desk was neat. Too neat. Papers stacked in perfect alignment. Pens arranged in a cup. The laptop gone. I opened the top drawer and found office supplies. Notepads, a stapler. The second drawer held file folders labeled with tax years and insurance documents. The third drawer was empty except for a single envelope, unsealed, with my name written on the front in her handwriting. I sat down in her chair and opened it. Inside was a printed email exchange, 3 pages long, dated over the past 8 months. The messages were between Claire and someone named Jordan. I did not recognize the name. I read the first page slowly, then the second, then the third. The tone was familiar, affectionate, the kind of shorthand that develops between people who talk often. There were references to meeting for coffee, to long conversations, to feeling understood. There was nothing explicit, no declarations of love or plans to leave, but the intimacy was undeniable. The last message was from Claire, dated 2 days before she left. I told him tonight. It was harder than I thought. But I know this is the right thing. Thank you for helping me find the courage. I set the pages down and stared at the corkboard on the wall. There was a photo of us from 5 years ago, standing in front of a cabin we had rented in the mountains. We looked happy. I could not remember the last time we had looked at each other the way we did in that picture. I folded the email printout and placed it back in the envelope. I did not feel anger, not yet. What I felt was a kind of cold clarity, the way you feel when you finally understand the dimensions of a problem you have been circling for months. She had not left because we had grown apart. She had left because she had grown towards someone else. But the ring. The ring in my toolbox still did not make sense. I spent the rest of the afternoon finishing the Morrison cabinets. Physical work has always helped me think. I sanded each door with steady pressure, working through the grits from coarse to fine, feeling the wood smooth under my hands. By the time I wiped down the last piece, I had a theory. Claire was not cruel. She was deliberate. If she had wanted to hurt me, she would have told me about Jordan directly. If she had wanted to make a clean break, she would have taken the ring with her or left it on the dresser with a note. Instead, she hid it where only I would find it, in the place that represented my work, my craft, the part of my life that had always been separate from her. She was telling me something. Maybe that she was sorry. Maybe that she still cared. Or maybe, and this was the possibility that kept circling back, she was leaving me a way to reach her, a reason to come looking. I cleaned up the garage and went inside. I made dinner, a simple pasta with olive oil and garlic, and ate it at the kitchen table while reading the email exchange. Again. Jordan's messages were kind but vague, the sort of thing a friend or a counselor might write. There were no plans mentioned, no romantic gestures, nothing that definitively crossed a line. But the emotional weight was clear. Claire had found someone who listened to her in a way I no longer did. I thought about calling her. I thought about driving to her apartment and handing her the ring and asking her to explain. But I knew that would be a mistake. If I confronted her now, she would feel cornered and defensive. She would shut down or double down on her decision to leave. What I needed was to understand the full picture before I said anything at all. The next morning, I called my sister. Diane lived 2 hours north and worked as a paralegal. She was practical and unsentimental, the kind of person who could look at a problem and tell you the most efficient way to solve it. I did not tell her everything, just enough. Claire had left. I found some emails. I needed advice on what to do next. "Do you think she's having an affair?" Diane asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe she just found someone easier to talk to. Does it matter?" "I think it does." There was a pause on the line. I could hear her tapping a pen against her desk. "Okay, here's what you do. Don't confront her yet. Find out who Jordan is. See if they're still in contact. If she's serious about leaving, she'll have made plans. If she's conflicted, you'll see it in her actions." "How do I find out without asking?" "Social media, mutual friends, her workplace. You'd be surprised how much people share without realizing it." I thanked her and hung up. I was not good with social media. I had a bare-bones profile I checked maybe once a month. But I opened the app on my phone and searched for Claire's name. Her profile was private, as it had always been, but I could see her friends list. I scrolled through the names until I found one that stood out. Jordan Ellis. The profile picture showed a man around my age, athletic build, smiling in front of a climbing wall. I clicked on his profile. It was mostly public. Photos of hikes and marathons and group dinners. There were pictures with Claire, casual group shots from what looked like work events or community gatherings. In one photo from 3 months ago, they were sitting at a picnic table with others. But the way Claire was leaning toward him, the ease in her posture, told me everything I needed to know. I closed the app and set down my phone. I was not angry. I was tired. Tired of feeling like I was solving a puzzle that should not have been a puzzle in the first place. But I also felt something else. A flicker of control returning. If Claire had wanted to disappear completely, she would have. Instead, she left me clues. The ring, the emails, the carefully curated distance. She was waiting to see what I would do. Over the next few days, I kept my distance, but stayed alert. I did not call her. I did not drive by her apartment. Instead, I focused on my work and watched for patterns. I noticed she had posted a photo on social media, something she rarely did, of a coffee shop I recognized downtown. It was captioned with a quote about new beginnings. I drove past the coffee shop the next morning on my way to a job site. Her car was parked out front. I did not stop. I noted the time and kept driving. 2 days later, I saw her at the hardware store. I was picking up sandpaper and saw her in the aisle near the paint samples, talking to someone. I moved closer, staying out of sight, and recognized Jordan. They were laughing about something, comfortable and easy. When they left, they walked to separate cars. I paid for my supplies and drove home. I thought about what Diane had said, about waiting for the full picture. I was getting closer, but I still did not understand why Claire had hidden the ring. If she was moving on, why leave a breadcrumb? That night I took the ring from my pocket and set it on the kitchen table. I stared at it for a long time, turning it over in my mind, the way I had turned it over in my hand. Then it occurred to me. The ring was not a goodbye. It was a test. She wanted to see if I would come after her. She wanted to know if I still cared enough to notice, to investigate, to fight for what we had built. And by hiding it in my toolbox, the one place that symbolized my work and my independence, she was asking if I would choose her over the safe, solitary life I had been living. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. If that was the test, then I needed to decide how to answer. The next morning I called Claire. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was cautious. "Hi." "Hi," I said. "Can we talk?" There was a pause. About what? About us. About what happens next. Another pause, longer this time. "Okay. When?" "Tomorrow. Dinner. Somewhere quiet." "All right." We agreed on a small Italian place we used to go to years ago, back when we still made time for date nights. I hung up and sat with the decision. I was not sure what I was going to say, but I knew I needed to say something. The silence between us had gone on long enough. The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant early and took a table in the corner. Claire walked in 10 minutes later, looking composed and a little uncertain. She slid into the seat across from me and folded her hands on the table. "Thank you for meeting me," I said. "Of course." The server brought water and menus. We ordered without much discussion, falling back into the rhythm of shared decisions we had practiced for decades. When the server left, Claire looked at me and waited. I reached into my pocket and set the ring on the table between us. Her face went still. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at me. "You found it." "I did." "I wasn't sure if you would." "Why did you put it there?" She took a breath, and for the first time since she had left, I saw something crack in her composure. "Because I didn't know if I was making the right choice. I thought if I left it somewhere, you'd find it. Eventually, it would give you a reason to reach out, or it would give me a reason to come back. But you didn't come back." "No, I didn't. Because of Jordan." Her eyes widened slightly. "You know about him. I found the emails. I saw the photos." She looked down at her hands. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She was quiet for a moment, gathering her words. "Jordan is a friend, a good friend. We met through work, and we started talking, really talking, about things that mattered, and I realized how long it had been since I felt heard, since I felt like I mattered to someone. You mattered to me." "Did I?" Her voice was soft but firm. "When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked me how I was, not just what was for dinner or when I'd be home?" I did not have an answer. She was right. I had let the distance grow because it was easier than facing what was broken. "I didn't have an affair," she said. "I thought about it. I won't lie to you, but I didn't. I left because I needed to figure out if there was anything worth staying for." "And what did you figure out?" She reached across the table and picked up the ring. She held it the way I had, turning it slowly in the light. "I figured out that I still love you. But I don't know if that's enough." The server brought our food. We ate in near silence, both of us thinking. When the plates were cleared and the check was paid, I walked her to her car. The night was cold and clear, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the parking lot. "I want to fix this," I said. "I don't know how, but I want to try." She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Sadness, maybe, or hope. "I don't know if we can. We won't know unless we try." She nodded slowly, then got into her car. I watched her drive away, the ring still in her hand, and I stood there in the cold until the taillights disappeared. Over the next few weeks, we started meeting for coffee, then for walks, then for dinners that lasted longer than an hour. We talked about the things we had stopped talking about years ago. I told her about the projects I was working on, the satisfaction of a joint that fit perfectly, the frustration of a client who could not make up their mind. She told me about the programs she was running at work, the people she helped, the bureaucracy that drained her. We did not rush. We did not make promises we could not keep. We simply rebuilt, one conversation at a time, the connection we had let atrophy. 3 months after I found the ring, Claire came back home. She did not announce it or make a big gesture. She just showed up one Saturday morning with her suitcases and asked if she could move back in. I said yes. It was not perfect. We still had to navigate the distance that had grown between us. We still had to learn how to listen again, how to prioritize each other above the easy distractions of work and routine. But we were trying, and that was more than we had done in years. One evening after dinner, Claire came into the garage while I was organizing my tools. She watched me for a moment, then picked up the ring from where I had set it on the workbench. She slipped it back onto her finger. "I'm keeping this here," she said, "on my hand, where it belongs." I nodded. "Good." She smiled, the first real smile I had seen from her in months, and went back inside. I stood there in the quiet garage, surrounded by the tools I had spent a lifetime collecting, and felt something shift. It was not closure exactly. It was more like clarity. The kind that comes when you finally understand that the work of a marriage is no different from the work of building something with your hands. You measure carefully. You adjust when things do not fit. You sand down the rough edges. And sometimes, if you are patient and deliberate and willing to start over, you end up with something solid and lasting. I turned off the work lamp and went inside. Claire was in the kitchen, washing dishes, and I joined her without a word. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, the way we used to, the way I hoped we would again. The ring stayed on her finger. The questions stayed answered. And the space between us, for the first time in a long time, felt like something we could both live in.